everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. My name's Josh. Thanks for joining me. Today is a completely different video than anything I usually do, and I used to do these in the past a lot more than I do now. But my wife sent me a video this morning, and I've had this kind of in my docket for a little while about wanting to talk about 10 reasons you should stop going to your church. And I know it's going to piss a lot of people off, but I'm also going to give you some helpful tips on what to look for in a church. I don't want everybody to leave the church completely, but I want you to stop going to these types of churches, okay? Because it's getting crazy. So let's talk about it. So, as you guys know, I'm an ex-pastor, okay? I was in ministry for 10 years. I was in a Christian band before that, which for 10 years. So I've been around church for a very long time. I've been going to church since I was 12 years old, and I honestly to this day believe that church is what saved my life, okay? I think that churches do really great things, and there are lots of great churches out there. But over the past few years, like I'd say 10 to 15 years, everything has completely changed, and it is getting really, really crazy. With social media and everything else and the emergence of influencers and all these kinds of things, church has become a place where they want to influence. They want to have pastors who are influencers and worship leaders who are influencers. And they think that they got to get out in the world and, bring people into the seats. And that is true. Like the mandate of the church is to literally convert people to Christians so they can go to heaven. That's like the highest mandate. God wants you to have a place where people come to receive the gospel, to hear it, and to believe so that you can go to heaven. That's at its most fundamental. That's what churches are. We are so lost in the world of churches today. It has completely changed. My wife sent me this video this morning, and it pissed me off. Get ready. This is a church. It's called Transformation Church. Take a look at this.
Hey, can't you see how we flow like the wall? Hey, little half you waiting for? He gave me the juice like a charger, so I gave it to you. And he healing me too, doctor. Once I get away for the free, overflow like I'm under the sea. You can see what we do with the sea. Now we got fruit in everybody can eat. You hear the word? Down like a bird. Walk with God, so I'm living to serve. Changing my life, so I'm giving you turn. Making the time. I'm just trying to live it up.
Now look, as a Christian growing up, that's the kind of concert we go to, and it's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong specifically with this, right? With going to a Christian concert and having a good time. But Christian hip-hop has completely changed too. Let's be real, it used to be terrible. And then Lecrae came around, and then everything changed, okay? Really, truly. And now hip-hop, it's indiscernible, this church service. Now, the song is called Undefeated Champion by We Are Transformation Worship. It is the worship team for the church. It's not a concert. It's probably a worship night. It's also not a church service. I guess technically it is, but it's not like a Sunday morning church service. This isn't what happens when you roll in on Sunday in your station wagon, you pull up and you go to church. That's probably not what happens, maybe to a degree. There's nothing wrong with the genre of music. The song sounds fire. The live band is great. The dancers are cool. I don't think there's technically anything wrong with it if it's a special event, right? What's wrong though with it, and especially in the Christian community, this can be a whole separate video unto itself, is the celebrity worship of these pastors and these worship leaders and these artists. And that is prevalent in a lot of mega churches today. Okay, big time. Okay, and it's straight idolatry, 100% idolatry. I'm going to ask you guys a couple of tough questions, especially those who go to church. Okay, and you're going to have to answer these honestly, and they're going to be uncomfortable. Okay, but question one, do you go to your church because of how the pastor speaks, because of who he is in the community, because of how famous he is, right? You have to ask yourself the questions, is he really that good, or is he giving a TED Talk on a Sunday to make you feel good about yourself, right? Our true pastor preaches the gospel, okay, and gives you the straight goods. And then it's up to you to decipher it and go research yourself on top of that, okay? They can help you do that with the theology that you've chosen to go to a church with a certain theology and you like that theology, okay? Because there's a million theologies, right? And a lot of them have very, very close similarities, but a lot of them are out to lunch. Mormons, in particular, not Christian, but you know what I mean? You've got Joel Osteen preaching that you're allowed to be wealthy and rich and that should be your number one thing. And if you're not, and you're not healthy and wealthy, there's something wrong with you. That's sinful. Do you understand me? Look, I'm a guy who doesn't go to church anymore. Do I consider myself a Christian? Yeah. And not in an old traditional sense of it, but in maybe a new way. I can still believe in God, like 100%. Like I still completely believe in God. I just don't believe in religion anymore. I think it's dumb. It's ruined it. And that's coming from, again, church hurt is a big part of that. And a lot of people are like, oh, you're just mad, Josh. Okay. if getting fired illegally and wrongly, all this kind of stuff is what opened my eyes, then that's what opened my eyes. That's why I talk about these. I'm very passionate about this stuff because I'm passionate about good church too. I'm passionate about what it could be and what it's supposed to be, by the way. So the question remains, why do you go to your church? Think about it for a second. It's because it's a country club. It's got a Starbucks in it, good coffee, really, really nice building. Everybody's kind of the same as you. Do you know what I'm saying? No poor people allowed kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay. Does your church, do you go because of what the impact they have on their community? Or do you go because it's a great place, it's got a playground in it for your kids? Right? Do you go because it's got comfy seats and great music? Or do you go because it's preaching the gospel and it's giving the straight goods? Why do you go? And why do you like your pastor? Because the pastor is the main draw at a lot of these churches, if not the main in most of the churches. Okay. In my case, the worship is secondary, but worship music and the way that the style of the music, band and stuff is the reason why a lot of people go too. Okay, let's be real. It's 1 and 2, and sometimes it's interchanged. And it's not a reason to go to church, everybody. And I'm going to give you 10 reasons today why you should stop going to these churches. I'm being dead honest. If your church does something like this, you should probably rethink where you're at least tithing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to that because it's a great positive experience, but those people singing and doing that stuff, they are idols and they know they are, and they're sinning. Okay, they're not up there being like, I love God, while they're wearing $10,000 pants, $5,000 Nikes, shirts that they'll never wear ever again, and they look like rock stars. That is not the way to humble yourself before the Lord when you're presenting worship music. Okay, and don't forget, guys, I was bought and sold into this type of ministry for most of my career because I thought this is how you got people's butts in the seats, and you did. But the rub is the people that are in the seats, they're not actually being converted properly. They're not being challenged in their theology or in their faith. They're just coming to listen to a TED Talk, feel good about themselves, drive away, and go to freaking, IHOP and not tip on the way out. That's what it's become. And that's insane. And I'm not saying that's everybody, because there's a core 10% of a church that are bought and sold for that church. They're bought and sold for the Lord. They're bought and sold for the gospel, and they will give everything, all of their time, their money, their effort to that church because they believe in it. That's 10%, okay? And then there's 80% of people who are just going for going. They like the community, they like the hanging out, they like the friends, they like the atmosphere, the coffee, they like looking like they're going to the right church, they can tell people they are. And then there's 10% of the people that are going there and they're stealing. Okay? And that 10%, that top 10%, they're the ones who work at churches. Okay? And you're going to not like to hear what I have to say today. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's not your place to judge churches and pastors, Josh. They're untouchable. There are people who believe that pastors and churches should be untouchable, should not be called out. And those people are dickheads. They're wrong, and they're theologically way wrong. The judgment of God is on churches today. I honestly believe that. That's why there are so many churches falling, and the biggest ones are falling the hardest. Hillsong, Elevation, Bethel. All these churches have had a massive exodus of people who are just like, nope. And Hillsong was one of the biggest, if not the biggest evangelical church, non-denominational evangelical church that lost everything because all they were doing, that top 10% of that cream of the crop leadership that you love so much, they were stealing. They were ripping you off, and they were living in the lap of luxury like kings and queens, while there are people inside their churches, in their pews, who were poor and couldn't afford to eat. It's disgusting. And you all need to open your eyes, and hopefully today, this video will open your eyes a little bit. And the reason why you should trust me is because, one, I grew up a Christian in a fundamentalist Baptist church. Associated Gospels was basically Baptist, okay? And I was brought up in that theology. It was hardcore. I'm talking purity culture. I'm talking everything you think of. Fundamentalist. No Christian, no secular music, no drinking, none of that. I'm telling you, it was old school. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you believe, okay? And then I entered into ministry. I went to Bible college, was educated at Redeemer University and Briarcrest Bible College. Okay, I took certificates. I'm not a pastor. I don't have my theology degree. Okay, but I took hermeneutics. I took biblical foundations, studied the Bible because I was supposed to. That's what I did at these schools. Okay, I went to these schools. I was educated in I'd say the top 2 Christian schools in Canada. Okay, and then I became a worship pastor, which is not a real pastor. It sort of is, but not really. I'm a clergy, which means I gain all the benefits of the taxes and all that kind of stuff. I'm a member, I'm a lead pastor of a church. That's what they considered me. There's a leadership team, and I'm in the top tier. So if there's tiers, there's leadership, worship, then there's like teaching pastor, and it's the kids pastors. It goes like, I was the top tier. I worked in this industry. I went to many conferences and took many courses on how to do all this stuff and how to be better, and learned all the numbers and took the friggin' personality quizzes and understood numbers and everything else. I was in it. I lived it. I was bought and sold. Blood, sweat, and tears. 80 hours a week, sometimes 130 hours one week I remember doing. I was in. So if you're going to listen to somebody, you should listen to me a little bit. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I lived it wholeheartedly and was bought into it. I believed it. Okay? So that's why I think I come with a little bit more knowledge than maybe some people that are sitting outside of it, because I was in it. Okay? I hope that helps. So there was this comment on this video that I have to show you. And I told this person, this comment is so effing dumb, I'm going to make a video on it. Okay? So you look at this thing, you see this church, and he's rolling up in a car. He's in the back, the lights are on him, the flashing. This is the star of the show. This is idolatry, by the way. Christian music, a lot of people justify listening to Christian music because like, it's Christian, it's got good lyrics, but you idolize the singer. You idolize the band. It's just as bad. This is the fundamental version of what the Bible says idolatry is. Okay? Idolatry is really, really, really tough, and we do it. Christian artists, worship leaders, pastors, they experience being idols, and it feels good. I was, and it felt good. Okay? Maybe might not be their reasoning to get started in it, but if they continue it while feeling it, they know it. Okay? Idolatry is a huge problem in Catholic and Christian churches. Idolatry specifically in Catholic churches with Mary and the whole thing going on with all that. That's insane. Worshipping saints, that's idolatry. I don't know if you knew that or not. Straight up fundamental idolatry. That's all that is. Okay? Christians do the same thing. We just don't call them saints. You know, people grew up in the church, listen to Christian music. Michael W. Smith is one of your saints. Right? You listen to the Christian music these days, you got Lecrae, one of the saints. They're modern day saints, and they are idolized, and it is a sin. It absolutely is. There's nothing different between the Christian music industry and the secular music industry, except for the Christian music industry makes a little less money. Okay, there's nothing different the way that any of them operate. They steal money from the artists. The biggest artists make all the money. I'm pretty sure Newsboys are still touring and are still headlining all the major Christian events. Are you serious? Guys are 185 years old. Hang it up, boys. Let someone else take the show. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, all that said, I can talk about that forever. But fundamentally, we're all messed up. And so we have to start from that place. Okay, we all start from the place of brokenness, and that's just the way it's always going to be and always has been. I'm not saying we can be perfect, but we at least should be able to call it out and have a conversation about it, right? Okay, so this guy leaves this comment about this. He's like, so crazy that people turn a blind eye to those who are in the church that love working lights, love stage designing, love doing visual effects, and have nowhere to work their gifts in a church that is able to showcase the gifts given us by God and glorify His name. Instead of using our talents for Chris Brown, NLE Choppa, they choose to be used for Alex Jeans and Miles Minix. We need this church so the body in full can be used to glorify God. Now, there's a couple arguments here. First, it sounds like these guys are on staff at these churches. So a lot of these artists, and this is how this works. I'm going to give you how the sausage is made. A lot of these major Christian artists, they will land at a church and become that church's main music pastor or music ministry leaders or whatever, right? And so that church will give them a salary of like $200,000-$300,000. I'm not even kidding, guys. Base salaries, 200, 300, 400,000. The bigger the church, the bigger the salary. Okay. The lead music pastors at Elevation Church are probably pulling in $500,000 to $1 million in royalties and salaries. They're making so much money. The Joel Houston from Hillsong fame, the guy that writes most of their songs, that guy is a multi-millionaire and still took a salary from the church just based on the songs that were being played at other churches. Every time a church plays a song, the artist gets paid. That's just how it should be anyway. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but that's how it works, right? So if 1,000 churches on a Sunday are playing an Elevation song or a Hillsong song, that church gets paid. That artist gets paid, just so you're aware. It's called CCLI. Look it up. Anyway, so that's one of the major issues with this, and it's kind of low-level like money laundering because they actually don't. A lot of these artists will maybe work 3 or 4 times at the church throughout the year, but are pulling in a massive salary because they're a name that brings people to the church, which is idolatry. Okay, we're there. You there with me? Okay, good. And so this guy is saying is that, and I've heard that I made this argument myself as a pastor. Why are you buying so many lights? Why do you need this new sound system? Why do you need these fancy guitars and these pedals and these auto tunes and these in-ear monitors and these bass thumpers? And why do you need to do this, that, and the other thing? I'm like, look, this is what gets butts in the seats, and we got to make it awesome. But this guy's making an argument to be like, y'all wishy-washy. It was literally the concert, the hip-hop R&B gospel album for worship had just released, and all you're judging every person that is there. Now, the reason why he's saying, well, why don't you let them work, instead of working for these industries, let them come to the church and work. I'm the opposite now. I used to think, yeah, that's great. And I used to think bringing in secular musicians was wrong to be on worship teams. And I'm like, why wouldn't you? If you want to expose people to the gospel, let them use your talents and gifts to the church. And often, and I didn't put this in my 10 reasons, but if your church doesn't let people serve at it unless they're Christians, leave the church. I'm not even joking. And people are going to be upset with me saying that. Okay? They're like, oh, if you're a Christian, you can serve here. No. If you want people to come into your church and you have all these cool things like bands, lights, blah, blah, let secular people, quote unquote, come serve in those positions. Then they get to hear the gospel. Pay them. Right? Then they get to hear it. Maybe it'll transform them. If you're saying that you want these guys to work at churches because that's the only place they should work and they shouldn't be out in the world, if you're a hardcore Christian and you believe what you believe, that's exactly where you should be. You should be on the Chris Brown tour. Maybe not Chris Brown, he's an asshole. I'm so sick of y'all N-word, he says too. On God. This guy's trying to like judge people, and I'm sick of all you N-words on God, and half of y'all be watching porn every night or be gluttons. And it's trying to like stand up for Christian values here. But that's exactly, the guy's like, what do you guys want these people to be? You want them to work at churches, or you want them to work in the secular world? If you're a diehard Christian, you should be working in the world because you are light. And you're going into the darkness to shed the light, and people want what you have. That's how this works. That's how it's supposed to work. And so these churches become these little clubs for all these people, especially worship teams, especially all the top tier musicians, Christian musicians in the world, in the US. You can take the top 100 Christian musicians and singers, and they all serve at the most expensive, most prestigious churches because they would never be caught dead serving at a church that doesn't have the most people, because all they're out for is fame and money. And you cannot change my mind on it because I lived the industry. You know how many conferences I went to for worship pastors where they brought up all these people to have these sit-down chats with us plebs down here trying to be like them, and they're just rock stars living the dream, pulling up in like $10,000 limousines. Like, it's just insane. Totally inaccessible to everybody else. They're rock stars. It is a sin to be in a church when you are a rock. I'm telling you, to live the rock star lifestyle, to live the way that Hillsong guys lived and Elevation rock stars live and the way they travel and everything, it's a sin. You are wasting God's money. That's ultimately, in the end, what it comes to. We're going to get to that. I know I have a long lead up to this, but I wanted to expose this comment because this guy's a literal dickhole. He's like, what do you want them to do? Work in the world? Yes, we do. You're a hardcore Christian and you're really good at what you do, especially in the tech industry. You are a light into that industry. You go in there, you're good at what you do, and you're a Christian. You're exposing people who would never be exposed to it. That's exactly it. So I'm opposite. Bring the secular people who don't know Jesus into the church, pay them well to work at the church, bring their gifts, and then watch them get transformed. Anyway, that's my rant on that. This guy's a dick. Here's another video that's kind of fun. This is from Teen Life SW. And I wrote, if churches have media teams, it's time to find a different church. And people don't like it. But this is, if you go to church like this. Does your church have people that do this, that take picture of people worshiping and video of people worshiping? No. And people think it's funny, but this is actually what's going on in some churches. A lot of churches, actually. And here's the thing about these types of churches. These leaders from these smaller churches will go to the big churches and they do these conferences, events, like North Point had one called Drive Conference. I absolutely loved it. They put so much money in behind this. And you'd go there and you get inspired to do all the things that North Point does, and you try to bring it back to your church, and they do. They think that they need to do this at churches that are like 200 people. It doesn't translate. So that's a funny silliness, but there it is. Okay, so I need you guys to go right now. When you're watching me, if you have a chance, head over to Instagram and look up this Instagram account called Religion Business. This guy is about to drop an 8-part series on the business of religion, and he's doing what I wish I could do and had the money and time and talent to do. He's doing it, and he's getting arrested, and it's getting crazy. But this podcast, really, really important. This little blurb. Listen to this.
Made 2 simple signs that said, Ed, what's your salary and what's your housing allowance today? Not a threat.
Well, those are fighting words to some of these guys, because this is like, I remember interviewing the former elders at Harvest Bible Chapel, and that was the question they wanted to know. Here they are, elders. They were given, literally, you'll love this, a pie chart of the salaries and, different categories of the budget, and asked to approve the budget. And they're like, we can't approve this budget. I mean, these are businessmen. Like, they know better. And it really boiled down to, we want to know, what's James McDonald's salary? And literally, they got in a room with him. It escalated to the point where they had this meeting. And apparently, when they asked him that again, he slammed his fist on the table and said to them, shouted with them. And I know to hear them describe it, they're like, it was like there was a demon inside this man. And he said, I would lose 10,000 sheep before I would tell you the answer to that question. Really revealing of what's going on in these churches. So you asked what has become somewhat of a fighting question. It shouldn't be. I mean, if they're a secular nonprofit, we've said this a million times on this program, but if you're a secular nonprofit, you have to file 990. One of the things you disclose are your top 3 wage earners. If there's a housing allowance, you have to disclose that as well. For some reason, and I kind of get it. These are churches. We don't like the government involved in our religious business. We get that. But at the same time, these are churches now. I don't think anybody envisioned these churches and ministries growing so large that you have tens of millions of dollars at your disposal. And that's what they're dealing with literally no accountability at all.
Okay, that's really, really good, that what she's saying there, and that's exactly how I feel. Here are the 10 reasons now. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. 10 reasons to stop going to churches like this. Mega churches, basically, okay? Or just, if your church is like this, just stop going to it. Okay, it might not even be a mega church. It might be a small church trying to be like a mega church, and these are going to be your big signs, okay? Number 1, do you know how much your pastor makes at your church? Okay, and I can ask, I want people who go to church, and this is mainly for you, and I know this is not going to get a lot of views, this video, but I don't care. I'm passionate about this stuff, okay? And those who watch me, who go to church, and maybe serve at your church. Maybe you're even like a member of your church, and you go to those money meetings. You know those meetings? They give you dessert, and they make it all happy, and they try to tell you the budget that's upcoming in the year. How many of you know how much your pastor makes? I almost would be willing to bet this bowl of eggs, okay, that 0% of you know what your pastor makes. Which churches out there tell you, and I mean, this narrows it down to a lot of churches that you shouldn't go to. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to a church because you don't know what your pastor makes, but are they willing to tell you? Okay? If your pastor is unwilling to tell you what he makes, I think the next question is, why are you unwilling to tell me what your salary is? Right? Why are you so unwilling to be transparent with what this church is giving you? And I'm going to follow that up by saying that pastors shouldn't be poor. They should be living comfortably. I'm saying that, but not wealthy. Do you understand what I'm saying? There is a fine line between why they do it and what they get paid to do. A lot of pastors stay in churches who don't belong in churches anymore because they have no other options and they're making lots of money. And they don't want to tell you that. Okay? Of a church of about 2,500, your pastor should be making between 800 and 100,000, 80,000, 100,000, 800. Right? That's comfortable. And especially, it depends on where you live in the market. If you're a pastor in California, you should probably be making more than a pastor that lives in Florida or Texas. Okay? Or in a place where it's cheaper to live. It all depends on where you live too, right? So, but a pastor shouldn't be poor. They shouldn't be struggling to feed their family or anything like that or pay the bills. Absolutely not. But don't forget, pastors also in my country and yours specifically, I absolutely think this is true. What they get is a clergy tax residency status. In Canada, that means 10 months of my rent or my mortgage can be written off on my taxes. So if I make $60,000 at a church, by the time my clergy tax residency and everything pops in, I only pay up to $25,000 in salary and taxes. So my taxes I used to get $6,000 to $8,000 returns when I was a pastor on my taxes because I could write off so much stuff because they want their clergy to have houses, and so the tax code allows for all this. It is amazing. So if a pastor makes $80,000, technically they're making way more than that because of the tax status that they enjoy. Okay, and a lot of people don't realize that. Okay, so if you go to your church and they aren't disclosing some of the most important numbers, like salary, because they'll disclose everything else generally, except salaries. Okay, and it's hilarious because when I got fired at my church at Creekside Church, they had sent me by accident a pay stub list or something like that showed what everybody made. And I was like, wow. Okay. And the reason I was wow was because there's 2 pastors in there. One specifically that should not be there anymore. Him and his wife pull in a salary. They each pull a huge salary. So those 2 at one household are pulling in so much money from that church. And this is why they don't want to tell anybody. And that's like, I mean, this isn't in my list, but are there pastors at your church that are there because they're kids of the pastor and they work there? Are there wives on staff? Are there people that are on staff that shouldn't be because they're connected somehow? Leave. Okay, leave. There is no pastor's kid that is entitled to the throne of the church because they are the kid. That's effing weird, and it should never happen. Okay, ever. Andy Stanley went and did his own church. Good for him. But there's no, just because they're the child of the pastor doesn't mean they get to inherit it. It does not belong to the pastor. So anyway, all that to say, churches are non-profit, and what she said there is that secular nonprofits have to tell you what the top brass makes, and they do here. You can look it up, and sometimes they make a lot, and people get really upset. But they have to tell you. Why don't churches? They are the same tax-exempt businesses. There it is. Number one, if your pastor refuses or your church leadership refuses to tell you what your top brass makes or what the salaries are, you should be questioning it at the very minimum. And if they tell you to go pound sand, you should go pound sand at another church. Okay, cool? Leave. If they're not going to tell you, leave. At the very minimum, stop giving your money to them. Okay? Stop. Number two, are there any NDAs at your church? You know what a non-disclosure agreement is? It's an agreement that you have to sign that means that you will not disparage or talk about the church or the agreement that you have made once you made an agreement. Now, when I took my church to court and I won, I had, in order to get the money, I had to sign the NDA. My NDA though specifically said that I'm only signing the fact that I'm not going to tell everybody what you gave me, because otherwise I wouldn't have got it, and I had no job and I had no money. I was forced. Otherwise I wouldn't have taken it. Okay. But I also made sure to say that I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement that says I can't talk about my experience. You can get wrecked. That's what I told them, and I didn't. That's why I told them. That's why I released the recording. If you haven't seen Why I'm an Ex-Pastor series on my channel, go watch it. I recorded my meeting where I got fired, where they lied. I caught them red-handed lying, and they weren't happy. It was awesome. Anyway, if your church has a non-disclosure agreement, and they're unwilling to tell you why, leave. I mean, if they have one, leave. I'm telling you this. If your church has forced people into legal silence by using lawyers, leave the church. Okay? This is God's church. Let's not forget this is God. And if you ask your pastors, is this God's church? Ask your elders, is this God's church? They're going to answer, yeah, it is. So then your next question needs to be, so then why have you forced people into legal silence? Right? And if they lie to you that there's no NDAs and you find out, obviously leave. But if a church refuses to answer, it means that they do. If they say that they do, then they do. And if they say they don't, then I would probably believe them. Okay? Because only the bigger churches will have these. And I can tell you some of the bigger churches probably have thousands of NDAs. Okay? But if your church, and I've did a whole video on this, if your church has an NDA and have forced people into silence so that they don't have to be transparent, leave. I'm not even joking. That's a non-starter for me. If I walk into a church and I start getting to know them and I ask them and I find out that there's non-disclosure agreements, I'm out. Bye. Because they are forcing people into silence, and not because they don't want to be held accountable for a decision or choice that they made or a person that they hired, and they don't want the church to know. They will silence them with money too. A lot of it is bribery. Also, crazy that they can do this, that churches will do this. When my church fought me, I'm pretty sure they spent probably between $20,000 and $50,000. They didn't put in the budget. They just put a line item, miscellaneous. And I heard that recording of their private meeting because someone sent it to me, and they were pissed. The congregation was pissed. Like, how much are we paying to sue this guy? And the church was like, they were stopped basically from continuing to pursue it because the congregation was like, no, we're not suing this guy because he's felt wrongly fired. Like, you're not spending $100,000 to sue him, because I would have went all the way, guys. Man, I was pissed. And so, again, pay attention to your church budgets. That's really important. But also, if you are serving at your church and you're dead set in there and you're going and you're giving your money and you're giving your time, I want you to go ask your leadership in an email. You don't have to face them off, and they might blow you off, but you be relentless in this. Does this church have a non-disclosure agreement against anybody, past or present? And if the answer yes, you're going to say, well, thank you. I'm moving on. That's bullshit. Number 3. Do they have massive productions? Now, this is going to be a lot of people are going to be pissed at this. When I worked at a church, and I worked at I consider what's considered a mega church in Canada, okay? Top like 2,300 people, 2,500 on a Sunday. That's a small church in the States, but a huge church in Canada, by the way. Okay? I was bought, again, I told you I was bought and sold into these productions, into doing secular music on a Sunday. Our Easter presentations were glorious, magnificent, tons of hours of practice. I would pay artists to draw this cool picture of Jesus, and this time-lapse painting was amazing. Like, the production value was incredible at Christmas. Okay, I did everything on the cheap because I'm a cheap bastard, and I think you could do things on the cheap that look good, but I still wasted a lot of money too. Okay, I really did. But churches who spend, you know what I'm talking about, when they got drummers coming down from like lines in the sky, and they got like, they're hiring furries, and they're hiring full bands, and they're hiring orchestras, and they're hiring all these production companies, and they're spending like $500,000 on a Christmas budget, and these productions on Sundays that are insane. If you're going to a church like that, you're going to a church that is wasting money. Okay, and so you need to reconsider, either at very minimum stop giving them your money if you like the production, all that's cool, or asking them what they're doing with the money and how much these things are costing, because they're not going to tell you. Again, if you ask a church any question and they refuse to talk to you about it, and you are a member of that church, specifically if you're a member, if you're not a member, then you can't expect them to, I mean, they should, but you can't expect them if you're not a member. But if you are a member, a tithing member of a church, and they don't answer your questions, that's like, erase all 10 of these. If they don't answer your questions that you have about anything, leave. Okay, they're not being transparent, and the first thing a church should be is transparent. This is God's money. This is God's church. These are God's resources, and if you're squandering them, I'd like to know, because I'm giving you that money, and if you're wasting it, then that's on me. If you don't know what your church is doing with your money, it's kind of on you if they waste it too. It's kind of a little bit on you. You're a little bit sinning too, just saying, okay? If you're just willy-nilly giving money and not understanding where it's going, you're enabling sinful behavior. So learn where your money's going, stop being a dickhead, okay? The reason why productions are pretty bad, in my opinion, is because that money could be used elsewhere. And I know this is a main argument. A lot of people, a lot of pastors will fight back, be like, no, you know, whatever. It's just, they'll give you shitty excuses. Like, I got to get butts and seats. This is God's house, and we should make it the best. And I sort of understand that to a degree. Like, we shouldn't be making people meet in cardboard boxes and stuff like that. But if the $50,000 you use for your Christmas budget, how many poor people could that have fed in your community? Right? I'm not saying you need to feed them all the time, but how many could it have fed? How many poor families could it have helped out of debt? How many homeless people could it have clothed and fed, or given a blanket to, or socks? Right? How many? You have to, because literally the Bible tells us that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing as Christians. As churches, they're not doing it enough. They are not doing it enough. Okay? Like, to the tiniest degree that they have to. That's it. Imagine churches all over the world had one mandate: to get into their communities and do really good things. It would be transformative of both of our countries. That's how much money is given to churches. It could literally transform your city or your town, and the church would still be able to function no problem. Which leads me to number 4, how much waste happens at your church. Here's how you check. How often they acquire new cameras and sound equipment? What is the reason to record the sermons? Now, a lot of people are like, well, you know, old people like to sit at home and watch sermons. Okay, I get that. There's a few. Let's be real. There's a few. And I have some examples here, but how much are they spending on like brand new things all the time? How many times are they expanding buildings, getting new chairs, getting new carpets, projectors, walls of TVs? The backstage of your church, is it a big giant LED screen that costs $250,000? Do you have playgrounds at your church worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Right? Does every room have a projector and a damn computer? Does the pastors all have brand new iPhones in their pockets and new MacBooks every single year? Right? Do your lights cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? Do you have smoke machines? Right? Do you pay your musicians hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be on that stage to play? Do your instruments cost millions of dollars? Do you have a room in your church that's just for like cameras, with a wall of TVs, and it's like a production facility for Fox News? Do they have that? Do they need that? Is the question, right? And here's an example. So if you go to North Point Community Church, which is why I use this church all the time, because I used to be bought and sold for this church. I loved it. I loved this church. I loved Danny Stanley, but now he's a dick. Okay, but this North Point, they have 47.6 thousand subscribers, 436 videos. Now, I've seen their production rooms, and they have like 5 churches with these same production rooms. Every stage in every one of their multiple campuses is the same, and sometimes those stage designs are hundreds of thousands of dollars per stage. Okay, I've seen their cameras on gimbals and on jibs. They literally have motorized jibs. Do you know what a jib is? It's a big giant crane that holds a camera, and it's on a motor, and it can be operated by a person or a machine. These things are hundreds of thousands of dollars. Every camera in that building, and there's probably a dozen, are probably worth well over $25,000 to $50,000. 8K resolution, like mind-blowingly good lenses, like zoom into your pores on your face. Like they have guys that walk around with gimbals. They're all connected wirelessly and wired. It is insane the amount of money they put into production of these. Like it's like they're making movies. Okay, but look at the view counts in their video. This is called The Power of a Made Up Story Part 2, Joel Thomas. 199 views. That was put up yesterday, okay? Last week, November 17th, 2 days ago, The Power of Made Up Story, 1.2 thousand views, okay? Leadership Labs Online featuring Dan, 489. Here's the sermons. Here's Andy Stanley. Miracle Then and Now, Part 4, 3.4 thousand views. Miracles Then and Now, 2.8 thousand views. Miracles Then and Now, 6,000. Like they're not breaking 6,000 views. Okay, and this is one of the biggest churches in the U.S. with $100 million a year budget. 4,000 views? For millions upon millions upon millions of dollars worth of production gear. Is that really worth it? Or could you have cheaper gear and the people who watch this would still watch it no matter what, right? It could still be great. But these, I know specifically when I went to North Point, I asked those guys about their old equipment. They're like, yeah, they get new stuff like every other year. It's insane, guys. I don't know how else to explain this. Insane how much churches waste. Go to your church. Ask what kind of cameras they have. They have Blackmagic 4K, 8K cinema cameras everywhere. Do they upgrade them all the time? Why? Why are they upgrading them so much? I have a camera here. Where'd it go? This camera. This camera is like 8 years old. Okay? It's a nice ass camera. You can still use that in church and be better quality than most anything else. You can use iPhones in churches now. It's better quality than most people. Okay? They use this as an excuse to spend the money so they can increase their budget so they can ask for more money. Not only that, they build a new campus every 2 years somewhere to expand it's like a McDonald's franchise. That should be one of these. If your church a franchise, go to another church. Okay? You don't need to franchise churches. There are churches all over the place. They're just doing it because they want to make more money, and they do. Andy Stanley is a multi-millionaire. So Andy Stanley's net worth $40 million per year, $3 million per month, $250,000 per week, $57,000 per day, $8,000. This guy makes so much money. And that's just someone conjecturing, but I believe it. $45 million. If you are a pastor that is that rich, leave the ministry. Leave. You're doing it wrong. Religion number 5. Can you meet your pastor? Is he accessible? Does he do counseling? Can you pop in on a weekday and be like, hey, I'd like to meet with Pastor Mulberry, please? And they're like, well, what is it about? Well, I got a couple questions about this. No, of course. Or you can call and email ahead and be like, hey, look, I'd like to meet with the pastor. Maybe we get a coffee. They'll meet with you. Small churches have this, okay? It's a thing. But mega churches, you'll never meet Andy Stanley. When I went to that church, that guy has a security team. A security team. He doesn't meet with anybody. He leaves through the green room, goes to his very expensive Lexus, and then drives away. He has a security team. And Stephen Furtick, security team, goes to his 8-bedroom giant-ass mansion when he's done in a house with 2 kids. Okay, these people live lavish lifestyles with security, and they're padded by their staff. You can't meet a pastor at your church? Don't go to the church. Pastors are meant to be pastors over flocks. They are meant to take care of the people that they are overseeing. If you cannot meet with your pastor, leave. Cool? All right. I know. There's a lot of churches. A lot of you people are like, oh my God, I can't meet with my pastor. Go to a place where you can. These people they're supposed to have wisdom. They're supposed to be in there for a reason. They're chosen for a reason, and they're there to help you, not help themselves. If your pastor is a celebrity, leave. Because my church, Creekside Church that I served at, they spend, and the reason I know they spend so much money is because I was there, right? Their latest video, I know how much these people spend on their little tech gadgets, okay? Because I was part of it and I was budgeting most of it too with the person that does it now, okay? These people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their production gear. Look at the views they get on their video, 59 views. I mean, you could release this as an audio podcast and you'd be fine. This guy here who's preaching, Tim, yeah, there's no reason that guy should be at that church, by the way. I don't know the new guy very much, but like 186 views, 224 views, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on production. Look, if you're getting 50 views online, you don't need $10,000 cameras. Okay, you don't need it. I'm sure the people that are diligently listening online would listen to an audio version of it and they'd be okay. They used to do them on tape cassettes, remember? And they would record it for a few of the people in the church who wanted it. They used to do that. There's nothing wrong with this ministry, but they always spend way too much on it. And it never pans out, never pays out the way it should. You know what I mean? Okay. Number 7, this is a big one. What does your church give to the community? Is it a lot? Is it a little? Do they serve? Now, this church that's local to me, I went for a little while and I actually liked what they did. They have very big ministries where they go out and help people who need it. You need a new porch? We'll come do it for you. You need us to move in some firewood for you because winter's coming? We're there. And they serve every weekend. And these old dudes, it's just all dudes. They just serve and they give, and it is amazing. Okay, I love that type of ministry. Now, does your church give the backpack drives for poor people, but do they have to ask the congregation to give those backpacks and not want to use their tithe money? Then they're just double dipping. They're not actually helping the community. The people in the church are, and they're taking all the credit. Okay? Do they do food drives at your church where everybody in the church brings in the food? Or do they spend the money, give the money to food banks that has like 3 times the spending power? They don't. Okay? Your church likely gives between 1 and 10%, maybe if the high end 10%, to the community in some capacity. Okay? There was a church in Florida. I think I've told you this guys a bunch of times. It's in my Our Church is Pro-Life video. This church was awesome. It was huge. And it had a celebrity pastor, but like they had this building at the back. And if you were a mother who chose life and you wanted to choose life, but you didn't have anybody help you with your bills, you didn't have anybody help you watch your kid because you couldn't afford it, and you needed groceries, you needed help finding a job, that's what this place did. Amazing. Incredible. We will watch your child while you go to work. You need us to watch your kid, we got you. You need help getting out of debt, let's help you get there. You need help finding a job, we'll get you. You need a car, you need to figure all these out, legal issues, we'll help you. These are women who chose life, and this church says we're pro-life, and we're going to stand on that by helping these women who chose life. Okay? Imagine every church in every community lined up and put together this big pot and owned this building that was just there to help people who needed it. Top floor, whatever, bottom floor is a daycare. Free of charge, you just got to have these parameters. Because there will be people who take advantage of it, but in my opinion, it's the cost of doing business. Okay? If you're a Christian, you're getting taken advantage of, If it's rampant, then okay, you're wasting your money and you're being a bad steward. But if it's like a couple people, you just deal with it. It's just the way it is, okay? But imagine churches actually mobilize their money to do things for the community, the local community. It would be transformative. It would be billions of dollars. It's incredible what could happen if they did it, but none of them do it. Go ask your church tomorrow or this week. Send a message to your pastor, your elders board. What do we give to our community, right? And why are we giving more? Why is our salaries 60%, but we're giving 1% to our community? How much are we giving to missionaries? You know, your church begs you to give them money when it's time to build a new auditorium or get a new piece of equipment or do this thing or send a bunch of people to Ghana to do missionaries, right? They ask all that and they'll beg you for years. But when you walk up to the church, if you need support and you walk in your church and say, look, I have no rent money, I'm broke, I lost my job, something happened, I dare you to ask your church. And some will, but some will be like, we'll pray for you. Right? They want your money, but when it's time for you to collect and you need something, we'll pray for you. That's the reality of most churches. Okay? I'm just saying. But there are great churches out there, communities that do good things for the community, and they literally live and breathe to serve their community. And it's very rare though. Okay? And those are the churches that should have 2,000 people at them. Okay. 8, toxic leaders. What happens to those people in your church? Do they get to keep their jobs because they're high level? Yeah, I bet you they do. There are so many toxic leaders inside churches, it's actually scary, right? Because grace. You have to give people grace. If your church isn't firing toxic leaders, leave the church. Those toxic leaders permeate throughout the whole building, and they are cancerous, okay? Cancerous. My toxic leader was the guy that was the no man. He was the guy, the executive pastor told everybody no. He had no business being pastor. This guy was so toxic. Okay, and nobody liked him. Nobody respected him. But because he was the guy who fired and hired people, he had all the power. No business being there, man. Okay, what does your church do with toxic people, even high-level leadership who might not even be on staff? If there are toxic people, do they allow them to serve? That's a big question. And a lot you don't want to answer that question. Number 9, is it a country club? Do you go there because it's the cool church? Do influencers go there? Well, if so, leave. That's not a reason a church exists, to be the cool place. It's not. I mean, there's a benefit, but it's not the reason you should be going. You should be going to a place to want to serve and be a part of these churches that cater to these people. Like where the LeBrants go, you probably shouldn't go to that church. Okay? If it entices influencers to go to it, it is obviously doing something wrong. I'm not joking. That's a really great marker of a badass church. Bad church. That's an ass. Don't go to it. Okay? Cool. Number 10. This is a big one, and I've been asking this for a lot of years, and I've never got an answer. Who owns your church building and all the things in it and the land? Have you ever asked this question about your church? Now, Catholics and I think Mormons and a lot of denominations, big denominations, they are the beneficiaries of the land and the church and the building and everything inside of it. But there are so many non-denominational churches out there now, more than there ever has been ever before, and they are the wealthiest churches with the most land, multiple campuses, multiple millions of dollars worth of technology inside, and they are owned. If for whatever reason they went under, there is a beneficiary. Who is the beneficiary? Is it people on the elders board? Because at my church, it's like 2 people. My ex-church, it's like 2 people on the elders board. If the church ever went under, those are the people who collect. And that land is worth $50 million. Okay? $50 million. So much money. So if your church went under for whatever reason, if there was a massive scandal with a massive exodus, who gets that? And that's crazy. And if it is a person or persons or the person who started the church, why? Why is the beneficiary not some nonprofit organization that's going to help the community or a Christian organization that's going to help missionaries? If it's not that, you should be asking your church, who owns this place if it goes under? Who stands to benefit if this church is no longer here? That's a really great question that nobody has ever asked, I guarantee you. Okay, and no one's ever been able, I was scared to ask as a leader because I'm not asking that. I asked my church because they went over budget by $150,000 on the new plant, and that's one of the reasons I think I got fired, because I started to ask hard questions. I'm like, that's $150,000 over budget. You guys asked us to freeze all of our budget so we can't operate our ministries properly because you were bad stewards of the money of that church. That's the executive pastor I'm talking about. He was the money manager guy. We all were asked to freeze our budgets mid-ministry because he went over budget. It's insane. We weren't allowed to do what we did because he wasted money. That's another toxic leadership trait. But who in your church benefits if everything goes down? That's a big question. And if it's an elder, that's a conflict of interest, and they should not be serving on the elders board. Okay? Have your elders and leaders been serving there for like 400 years? Nope. Leave. Unless they're really good. Maybe they're really good. But you need to assess why people serve where, and they should, because there are a lot of toxic elders in churches that run the ministry and they tell you what to do, and they should not be there. If you get a chance, read Devil in Pew Number 7. I think it's called The Devil in Pew Number 7. I forget. I think that's the name of the title of the book, but it's a really, really, really amazing book, and you should read it. And I'm not going to tell you what it's about because I don't want to be spoiler alert, but toxic elders exist. So that's the 10 reasons you shouldn't go to church. If any of these things are popping up in your church, they should be a problem for you. A lot of things go unnoticed. People just kind of go and they don't ask questions, and then leadership gets away with it. They get away with waste. They get away with being a bunch of dickholes. They don't have to answer to anybody. And it's basically a sin. Churches are living in absolute sin. It's not with the modern day church and where it stands, especially non-denominational churches with celebrity pastors, was not the vision Paul had for the church. Okay, again, the church isn't some dude up there like Stephen Furtick wearing $1,000 shoes and a $250,000 sweater he's going to wear once, preaching about how good he is, taking roids. Okay, that's not what the church is supposed to be. The church is a group of people gathering as believers to help one another, to yoke one another, to be yoked with one another, and to help its community. That's what the church is for. That's what the church is. It's not a building. It's not Andy Stanley's freaking khaki jeans. It's literally you, the people. It's getting together. It's not music. It's not production. It's not bricks and mortar. It's the people. And we have absolutely forgotten that. And that's why I've deconstructed my faith over the past 4 years. I do want to go to church. I really do. I really want to find a church that's good, that has great community impact, that does really good things, that a pastor is a regular dude who I can call up if I have an issue or need some counseling. It's generous to its missionaries. It's very transparent in every single penny that it spends. Right? So I'm trying to be nosy, but I also want to be like, if I'm going to give this church a lot of money, I want to know where this money's going. So many people give so much money because they want the status inside the church and they want to be accepted. If you're a tithing member of your church and you're in good standing, stop tithing. See what happens. I want you to just do it just as a test. You could put that away in a bank account and give it to the church later if they do good with how they respond to it. But I want you to, like, if you're a big tithing member of your church, I want you to stop. Right? And maybe tithe somewhere else anyway. Maybe go buy a bunch of clothes and give it to the food bank instead. right? Because they need it more than the church does. But, how will they respond if you stop tithing? If a church requires its leaders who they hire to tithe to them, don't work there. I mean, I can go forever. But this is what's happened in my faith. And it was forced on me by church hurt. And I think that that's okay. Sometimes your eyes are open in certain ways and sometimes they're open in other ways. And my way was having to see these pastors openly lie to the congregation and not even blink an eye. And it made me realize the 10 people that went before me, and I had conversations with those 10 people, they were all fed the same line of bullshit. They were all lied to too, and were told to lie to people and sign non-disclosure agreements. Damn, the church has messed up and we are at a place where we shouldn't be. Head over to Religion Business, see what that guy's doing. He went to a church and he had a sign in the parking lot. It's like, how much does the pastor make? What's his housing allowance? And he got arrested. Churches are arresting guys for asking questions. I dare you to ask your pastor what he makes. And if they don't answer, be like, look, if you don't answer these questions that I have, I need to know if you have NDAs. I need to know what the leadership makes here. I need to know where my money's going. If they refuse to answer, they would rather see you walk out the door, I kid you not, than answer that question. And they would probably maybe force you to walk out that door. I'm not kidding. But I dare you to. I dare you. Anyway, sorry for the long rant, crazy video, but I needed to get this off my chest. It's something that's been eating at me for a while. And damn, these pastors. Bunch of dicks. Judgment's coming, man. These pastors who claim that they preach the gospel and they preach and they live otherwise are going to be so harshly judged by God that I don't think they're going to make it into heaven. That's how badly they're going to be judged. Because if you claim to be a teacher of Jesus, but are living in sin and doing things opposite of that, and are like stealing money from poor people, holy shit, you're going to be judged. And thank God you will. So be careful with the churches that you go to, folks. Start being responsible with what you do with your time and money, because it's on you a little bit if you're just blindly giving to places that are stealing. Okay? So just make sure you're being careful. If you have any questions, I'm always open to talk about theology or churches. I'm down always. I love when people ask me those types of questions. Maybe I'll do a live stream on like church world, church hurt, church leadership, the sausage is made, and you guys just ask your questions. I think that's what we should do. I really want to get my Burnt Out Pastor podcast re-going because it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. And I think there's a lot of people, ex-ministry professionals and stuff, that could have a lot of good things to say to call it the church in a good way. Because there is a healthy way to do all this. And once the church is held accountable and judged, it can go back to the way it's supposed to be. And that's what we're trying to do. So, everybody, take a deep, deep evangelical breath. I can't breathe. I'm getting cold. But you guys are awesome, incredible, and valuable. Don't you forget it. Whether or not you go to church. I hope this doesn't turn people off from going to church. But I absolutely hope it keeps people accountable who do go. Because there are great churches out there with great leaders doing great things. And I'd like to hear some of the stories in the comments below if you have those. But you be awesome. Stay awesome. Don't forget someone has a huge crush on you. Okay? And I'll see you when I see you.